Welcome to Rappahannock Issues. I'm Tom Cohen.
And I'm David Kerr.
And we're going to be looking at topics that are of interest to our community, both regionally and to the state.
Hello, I'm David Kerr, and welcome back to Rappahannock Issues. We have our super panel tonight. We have Dr. Deidre Condit from the Virginia Commonwealth University, and Dr. Stephen Farnsworth from the University of Mary Washington, and of course, Tom Cohn. We've been talking about the Virginia legislature the last session, and we were talking about ethics, and we were just having a little chat during the break about about former Governor McDonnell and his conviction and his subsequent sentencing. And you were noting that you didn't think necessarily that he was going to go to jail or that he'd actually be sentenced or have found guilty at the end of the day.
I think there are a lot of indicators when we as scholars sort of look at how we determine or try to predict what the appellate courts are going to do. When we see cases that have serious questions indicated by things like the number of attorneys general around the United States who are writing and filing briefs on the side of the
44
McDonnells.
attorneys
44
general
at this point.
Yeah.
It indicates that there's a problem with the law itself, with the federal law and how it's been applied in this case, but that usually means there's a problem with how it will be applied across cases, that it's vague, it's unclear, executives don't know how to enforce it, and I think that's what we will see probably with this particular case.
This is a problem that isn't going away because ultimately we have a constant challenge in terms of trying to figure out what is acceptable for the way in which money can influence politics. We go back and forth with different Supreme Court cases and different Supreme Courts themselves coming to different conclusions about these issues. In the case of the particular law in question in the McDonnell case, there's an idea that politicians need to provide honest services, that politicians should be even-handed in their treatment of people who come and ask for things from government, be they donors, be they non-donors. And when you look at the case that we're looking at here with the former governor, there's a real concern on the part of the jury that this is appalling, that this is abusive, that this is out of control. When you talk about $177,000 worth of goodies for the governor and for his family and loans and all the benefits, people think this is outrageous. That's what the jury thinks is out of control. And that's why the jury spent very little time and came back with a conviction on nearly all counts for the governor, for Mrs. McDonnell. The problem, though, is with the law, not with the jury, because the jury is appalled. But what the law suggests, as my colleague on the panel has just mentioned, is a certain vagueness that's going to make it really hard to prosecute consistently across the country. It's also a situation where there is a ripe opportunity for appeal, in part because there wasn't a clear connection. In some ways, the real crime is what is still permitted within the law rather than what's illegal. And campaign finance is a great example of that truism about politics.
And you know, these laws, the federal laws emerged because it was clear that the states were reluctant to regulate themselves. So the fact that the Virginia legislature has just gone through this 8-week exercise in which it kind of wanted to, but it wanted to regulate the governor a little bit more than they wanted to regulate themselves, is the exact reason that from the 30s on, federal laws about corruption that apply to the states have been escalating and being rewritten and tuned, because at the federal level, Congress looked down and said, they're not going to do it themselves, they're not going to put the kibosh on themselves, we'll do it. But the problem is that then the language ends up being incredibly complicated and vague in this particular case, and difficult to pin down. What was the exact quid pro quo in this? What did he get out of his relationship of giving gifts to the governor? that's a little nebulous, and I think that's where the problem lies.
Well, and then you look at other states, Illinois, Massachusetts. We have a mayor elected while he's in prison. Rhode Island, cases in Florida. So it's a little hard to come up with a one-size-fits-all on a federal level, especially with how legislation is made.
I've lost track of how many Illinois governors are in jail at the moment.
I mean, so it's a really messy situation, which it's just going to take time to tell. And as you were saying, it's before the break how hard it is to get people to run for office who are good candidates because of the gristmill they go through. This just makes it even harder because once you get in, you think you're doing a good job, and then all of a sudden the federal government comes down on you when all your advice is saying you're doing everything right. So it really makes it harder to get people to run when we're going to be doing things like this.
And it is important in terms of the national context to note that Virginia is not close to the top of the list in terms of America's most corrupt states. I think, as far as Illinois is concerned, we can probably retire the title. But increasingly, I think it makes sense to say that Virginia is starting to look like it's in the Sweet 16, if not the Elite Eight, with respect to the medal round for corruption. So
everybody wants to be number one at something. So.
Well, we're on our way.
Well, on the budget, when we were going to this, there was a lot of talk about this was going to be a really bad budget year, but then it ended up being something that they ended up being to do with very little hashing. So what was your take about the great budget battles of 15?
Let's hear it for unexpected revenues, right? I mean, the revenue situation is better than the dire predictions, and I think that has taken a little bit of the tension off the budget crisis. But the truth of the matter is the Virginia budget is really unclear, and I don't think we're going to know for another year how it's all going to settle out. And frankly, it depends in an odd way on what happens around the rest of the world in a pertinent way to Virginia. That we're seeing the global economic situation much more tenuous than the American situation, and I think they were able to escape this year without having to go toe-to-toe and fight over nickels and dimes.
But as you say, we still need to see how this shapes out. I mean, you're still looking at really high vacancy rates in Tyson. You're still looking at a significant problem in terms of the longer-term revenue projections. The last few months have been pretty good, and this has taken the pressure off the immediate concern. I think that the legislature and the governor got out ahead of the budget crisis when they passed the two-year budget last June, and so there wasn't anything other than a sigh of relief this time. But the key factor, I think, to remember is that the biggest crisis that divided the executive and legislative branches last time was simply pulled off the table this time. The question of Medicaid expansion, which came to almost trigger a shutdown of the Virginia state government like we see in Washington, that issue didn't get to much attention this year because it was pretty clear that the legislature was going to go nowhere on Medicaid expansion, and the governor quite wisely said, how are we going to pass some things that we can agree on? And so that made the big difference this year.
Well, and we have less than a minute left. I mean, with the part of the budget, and maybe the feds could think about doing this, is the idea of the two-year budget cycle, which sort of takes it off the table and makes it a little bit easier to deal with, sort of to swallow because it's not as bad. And as we go into break, we hope that you're going to swallow some more and come back, and we will look at some particular bills that are of interest to the panel. So come back after the break.